best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine?
You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine.
Hello everyone, welcome back, finally, to another exciting episode of Ask the Treksperts. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
And Sarah and I have not made Treksperts in months now. We are finally bringing the show back. I'm very excited about it. Yay! Welcome back, Sarah.
Yeah, welcome back us.
Here we are. We're going to talk about Star Trek some more for you. God, what is it? Year 5 now, finally, of Treksperts?
Yes, that's scary.
I think Geekvolution is on 5 years, and I think that was one of our early shows. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so we've been doing this. I mean, again, we were on hiatus for a while, but we're finally bringing it back, and we're going to do our level best to come up with lots of more fun things to discuss about Star Trek for you. And we are gonna get back into Trek real hard, Sarah and I. We've been doing a lot of other things for the last couple years, and it's been a while since we've just really immersed ourselves back into Star Trek. So while we are refamiliarizing ourselves with it, we're going to bring more Ask the Treksperts to you. We want to invite everyone, as always, to ask us questions for Ask the Treksperts. You can leave those in the comments below. Topics of discussion you'd like us to do, or episodes you'd like us to review, but we want to get away from just episode reviews.
Yes.
And that's part of the reason, just to be candid for a minute, it's part of the reason we stopped for a while, was we felt like we were kind of out of discussion topics. We've done so many of these, and we were mostly just doing episodes, and frankly, we enjoy doing that, but it's just not as much fun. We like to kind of discuss and spitball and throw out ideas and opinions and things about broader Star Trek topics.
Especially list videos, though.
Yeah, and we do want to do more of those. And when I say broader Star Trek topics, I mean not just episode reviews. Obviously, we like to get in the nitty and gritty of very, very specific things. So anyway, today we're going to, without further ado, discuss Star Trek the Animated Series. Before we really roll into it, I want to throw out a couple of caveats. The first thing is, this is not going to be a straight-up review of the series. This is the area of Star Trek that Sarah and I are most unfamiliar with. This is the first time either of us has watched the entire show. We have each seen episodes of it, but we've never watched all of it.
Yeah.
And, well, we have now.
We have now. But we haven't. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it yet.
Before, but we certainly would not call ourselves Star Trek the Animated Series spurts. Because we have now a passing familiarity with the whole show, but we still can't talk like incredibly intelligently about it because we've only seen everything once. And frankly, this show, more than anything else I've ever seen, really blurs together.
Yeah, it really does.
And so we're gonna kind of talk kind of broadly about how we felt about the show. We'll discuss the specific episodes as they come up, but we're not going to talk about every single episode. And we're just going to kind of give you our thoughts, our first thoughts of finally having seen all of it. And maybe down the road, don't want to promise anything, we might go back and do specific episode reviews on a few of these. I think that could be fun to do. But today we're just going to kind of generally, in a laid-back way, discuss Star Trek the Animated Series. Sarah, why don't you start us off by telling me, I know I do this a lot, but I think for something like this, this is a really good way to begin. What do you think is something that this show really excels at, and then something that it's really a department it's really lacking in?
Oh, I think it excels at coming up with very out there, ridiculous, crazy things that no one would ever do live action.
And that sounds almost like a backhanded insult. Is that a positive?
Well, it's great for a cartoon show.
Yeah,
you really wouldn't be able to do that. You'd hate to have them all. You'd hate to have a bottle show animated where nobody does anything fun except stand there being talking heads and walking down corridors. Wouldn't that be horrible?
Yeah, it's like they're pretending like they have the live action limited kind of problem that you do when you want to do like big creatures and things in a live action show, but you have to build them. Well, in animation, even if your animation is limited, even if your animation is crappy, you can crappily animate anything you want to.
Yeah, giant rock monster. Inflatable Enterprise 5 times the size of the original.
Yeah, that would have cost a lot of money in the original series, but it doesn't cost anything here.
So I mean, it's fun. I loved it when I saw things that...
Except for perhaps credibility.
Yeah, but on the other hand, what were they trying to be? Were they trying to be credible, serious, you know, everyone has to take a seriously show. You know, we're highbrow entertainment.
And I think we should talk about that, because I'm not sure ultimately in sometimes when I'm watching the show what the answer to that is.
Yeah. And I would agree with you in places.
Yeah.
But at least they got the ridiculous down, which is what I was really...
And you enjoyed that.
I loved that in an animated show. And especially in this one, I loved it when they threw crazy stuff at us.
But that doesn't mean that you have the opinion that you can't do serious animation,
oh, no,
right?
of course not. But in this, I had always heard that...
But you felt like you were watching Saturday morning cartoons,
yeah.
so you wanted Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
Sure.
I wasn't looking for this series to change hearts and minds, or, you know, make me go through 10 emotions in an episode.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I was looking for something fun, diverting.
You didn't need brilliant morality play.
Yeah.
You could deal with the moral is thrown at you at the end after we do silly stuff the whole time.
Yeah.
And frankly, you were a fan of Captain Planet, so you're used to that.
Yes. And, yeah. That was the thing I liked about it, was anytime they threw...
So you like the camp, you like the goofy.
I love the campy, I love the goofy. That's really what I was looking for in the show. The thing I didn't like most, wow, what to pick?
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of things, because there are a lot of things, not that there were so many horrible things that the show was horrible, but there are a lot of just things, places you can go with this.
Yeah.
I'd say, for as much talking as they did, I think they could have gotten more done in the scenes of dialogue. It seemed like every time we had a scene, it seemed like a couple people got together to discuss what was happening. And there was just too much exposition in the dialogue, where the show was going, and then suddenly we stop, and it drags. And we got this in almost every episode. And I think the whole series could have been a little bit faster paced. I think it could have been more fun and more enjoyable. And I think if you had removed the giant bulk of unnecessary exposition in each episode would have stood out more. And the series wouldn't have blurred together overall, as I found it doing for me.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Why do you think it felt the need to play that way so often? Was it an attempt at getting science fiction credibility? Was it, you know, this is Star Trek, and people remember... Because remember, Star Trek had been off the air for several years. Animated series begins in '73, and if you don't know anything about it, it was only on for 2 seasons, except the second season got canceled really prematurely, so it was only 6 episodes, and the first season is like 18. Does the math work out there? It was 22 episodes. So the show being off for a while, they're trying to recreate what Star Trek was to a degree. They do have a lot of people writing and working on the show that worked on TOS. The script supervisor is DC Fontana. You had Samuel Peoples writing an episode. You have Mark Daniels, who directed, if I remember right, a lot of TOS. If not wrote some of it. Forgive me if I'm wrong about that. Sometimes the names tend to blur together. You read so much about this stuff. But anyway, you've got a lot of people working on this show, and we'll talk about voice actors a little bit later, who worked on the original series, and a lot of people behind the scenes were some of the same people. So why is the feel so different? It's not just that it's a cartoon, because if that were the case, it would be less dull and rigid and generic as it feels sometimes. Although I don't know if generic is the right word. I think just, like, boring is the best word I can describe it a lot of the time, and kind of stale, right? Like there are a lot of places where, as you said, people are just talking. They're just explaining things, and anyone could be given a lot of the dialogue that people have, because it's in a very cumbersome and in-your-face way, just telling you what they think you need to know to understand the plot, that and not really allowing the characters to shine in any way, not really letting the fun original series characterization that is a lot of the reason people love the show so much really come out. Why do they write it that way?
Well, I think there are 3 possibilities. It could be any one of these, or a combination, and I'm sure there could be other factors that I'm not even thinking of. One is they could be trying to make sure the kids get caught up. You know, they're thinking, well, we're Star Trek writers. We're used to writing for a show that's, it's a family show, but we aim it at adults.
It's
Now,
semi-cerebral.
We don't want to go over the kids' heads, so we'll have these same higher concepts, but then we have to explain it for little Jimmy who might be watching.
But very often it's not the concepts they're explaining so much as just
what's
like
happening.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It could be that they're just trying
More
to make
often
sure.
it's just cultural details.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
It could be just making sure the kids are caught up. I
Okay.
don't know.
What else do you think?
Another thing is, it could be that they have these concepts and they're used to writing for a 45-minute show, and they're trying to condense it down to 22 minutes. But
what's weird is...
But I would think...
It feels like it's dragging.
It feels
More
like
often it feels like they're padding it. How many times in the show, especially in the earlier episodes, do you see the Enterprise just moving?
Yeah, it could be that they're overcompensating, where they're saying,
it's like
we
15,
have to write
20
something
seconds just doing this with like stock footage before a single line is read. Like, look, it'll be like this.
Yeah.
And then suddenly... Captain's log. Any TOS episode would have opened with Captain's log.
Yeah. Well, maybe they're overcompensating, where they think, well, we need to make something really short, so they make something that's too short.
But a lot of these were episodes, I don't know how many, I know at least a few of these were episodes that were adapted from scripts that were going to be Season 4 scripts.
Yeah.
Or were treatments that have been kicked around as being an episode. And those would have had to have been condensed. Wouldn't you think that you would see stories in this show where you would think, boy, if only they had more time and really fleshed this story out, I would have enjoyed it more. Sarah, I did have that experience with this show one time.
Yeah.
Maybe yesteryear, maybe. You know, there are a couple where, you could have maybe fleshed it out, but I never really felt like, boy, there's just too much crammed in this episode. I never felt that.
I never felt
that. That's what I'm saying, you know, like, there are Batman episodes like that, you know, there are Spider-Man and X-Men episodes, like, there's all kinds of cartoons that I've seen where I can go, man, you did a really good job of making that story work in 22 minutes, but if only you'd made it a two-parter, or if only you'd had 45 minutes.
Yeah, well, and the third thing is they maybe also weren't used to animation. Now, I don't know what the difference would be, you know, giving script-wise to actors versus script-wise to voice actors, which were really the same actors.
And are you even thinking animation?
Yeah, but
as being,
it could be that they're just hung up on, oh no, this is animated, so it's going to be different, so maybe the pacing has to be different or something. But those are my thoughts. I don't know.
But again, you'd figure that pacing would be more fast-paced. I mean, yes, it's Filmation.
Yeah.
Yes, Filmation did a lot of this, like really rigid, stolid animation where they're cutting corners, so characters very often are just standing there not doing anything, and then they have like certain models that they've built for whenever a character will finally actually do some sort of acting, like action. There's hardly any place in the show where anyone is both talking and doing something at the same time.
Yeah.
It never happens. It's always talking heads, and I have to mention this because I think it's hilarious. Every time somebody runs, they have to go into a full-blown run every time.
Yeah.
In one of the later episodes, I think it's like third to last, second to last. There's an episode where Kirk or Spock, I think it's Spock, is about to run across the bridge. And he goes like this, like if I were gonna run across the bridge, I'd just run across it. No, he's gotta like fully get in this and then run like that, and he goes like 3.5 feet. And like that's what you see them do whenever they're gonna go like all the way across a desert or something.
Yeah, go
and he just
fulfilled.
it goes like this. And by the way, that is always hilarious. Yeah. Every time they do that, I lose my mind.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm getting off track. But I thought that's hilarious.
So what did you think were the best and worst aspects of the show?
The thing I enjoyed the most about this show, and this is going to sound really weird, and it's kind of a curiosity more than anything, is the 70s flavor versus the 60s flavor. If I'd gotten a show that allowed itself to be what it sometimes was, which was just bombastic and ridiculous and kind of drug-induced, it would have been more fun. And I would have been with it more often. There are episodes where if you take out the really dull, boring talking parts, and you just keep in the really over-the-top sci-fi ideas. I guess I'm sort of saying the same thing you are, but I'm also just thinking, like, the overall flavor of this show, the tone of it, the atmosphere is okay, and added to that, a lot of the creature designs and planet landscapes are neat looking.
Yeah. Definitely.
They're not ever animated really well, but it's Filmation. I expect that, so I can't criticize that too hard.
But the design is cool.
It's the studio, but there are some definite corners cut a lot of the time in even designs where things will just be way more oversimplified than they need to be, and inconsistently so. Where you'll have like if the whole show was done in this style, okay, but there are places where you'll get a landscape that's like really ultra detailed, where you're like somebody put some work in this. This is neat looking. This should be. This should be like comic panels. It just occurred to me somebody should do a Filmation style Star Trek comic.
Oh, that'd be kind of neat.
Because why not?
Yeah.
IDW should release this.
Yeah.
IDW. Seriously, you guys need to do this. In the Doctor Who Star Trek TNG crossover, there is a flashback sequence that takes up most of an issue, where this is the best part of the whole book, where they go where we go back in time to, I think it's the Tom Baker Doctor hanging out with Captain Kirk.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's done pseudo in this style. It kind of looks a little bit like this. I'd love to see an entire comic book done that way.
Sure.
Anyway, I'm getting off track. So like the flavor of it is fun, and even the like if the scripts were tighter, and some of the concepts are cool. If the scripts were tighter, the thing was just overall a little bit more like energetic and fast paced, which I just feel like this needs. This is like the pacing of Hong Kong Phooey. It just needs to pick up a bit. I kind of, or like Droopy the Dog, although the pacing worked for that.
I never saw that one.
But I'm just thinking that like if it had that, I could much more easily get behind weird formulaic choices that they do every episode.
Yeah. I
very seriously considered doing this entire show with you back here and me up here. Like this. Because every episode someone talks like this, and half their face is off the screen, and usually they're smiling, and it's bizarre, and I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it comes off as a mistake.
Yeah.
Oh my! I mean, they do it every time, but I can't decide why. I'm just like, what is that? But like that weirdness is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But it's awkward because of the stuff that's not working, and just the sheer amount of sitting there waiting for something to finally happen. The worst thing of the entire show, in my opinion, and there's as you said, other things we'll talk about, is undoubtedly the female voice acting.
I knew you were gonna say that.
It never, nothing else is like there are entire episodes where like the concept and execution both make my stomach churn. I don't mean to take this thing too seriously, but the whole business about, I don't remember the name of the episode. The whole, is it Magics of Megas 2? I forget. One of the episodes, they go back to the Salem witch trials.
That was it.
And there is that the one?
Mega Stew.
Cool. They go back to the Salem witch trials, and they say like so many things in TOS, like Apollo and stuff, that was actually like alien induced and stuff. I hated that. It didn't work at all. Yeah. And I don't even just mean for original series. I mean for the show, it didn't work. It really bothered. I don't know why, but it was hard to watch. Even over that stuff, I almost picked that episode as the worst thing of the whole show.
Yeah.
Even more than that stuff, every single woman in the show, I should say almost, because I could be wrong, there might be like one or two, nearly every single character in this show is voiced either by Nichelle Nichols or Major Barrett. There's a big problem with that. Those two women have really nothing against their acting ability, but they both have incredibly distinctive voices. Yeah. And it grates on me so hard because Majel Barrett, nobody else on Earth sounded like she did. And that was part of the charm of that actress, is that she had a look and like so many cool actors, she had a look and a sound all her own that nobody else had. She can't voice every woman in an episode. And I don't just mean in the show, I mean in an episode.
Yeah.
toward the end, there is an episode. I think it's the last one, even. Yeah, it's the last one. It's Counterclock Incident. That episode, the Animator universe. Where do I begin? People are born before the people are elderly when they're born. And Voyager did this, but not like this. The people are elderly when they're born. They age backwards. They die as infants. Apparently or at least the Enterprise crew did. Apparently they lose their memories as they age. Figure that one out if they don't have any to begin with. I don't understand that. Maybe it doesn't work the same way as it did with the Enterprise crew. And then the line that boggles my mind, the ancestors come later, but the descendants come before. Thank you. What does that mean? Anyway, at that point, aren't the ancestors the descendants, and you would just call them that? I don't. Anyway, but in that episode, that's the one with Robert April. Mm-hmm. His wife is voiced by Nichelle Nichols, trying to make herself sound really old, and it's just laughable. And then she has a conversation at some point with another female character voiced by Nichelle Nichols and Uhura at the same time. Mm-hmm. Noodle that one. They didn't even get Majel Barrett to voice one of them. Majel Barrett and Nichelle Nichols, every time there's a female character that's like on a planet, an ambassador or the prime minister or something, always...
All those women on the Lorelei syndrome?
Oh my god, every one of them. They were all Majel Barrett. A couple of them were Nichelle Nichols. I couldn't deal with it. It kept, but like, I couldn't focus on the stories. Yeah. I couldn't pay attention to what was going on because it just kept hurting my brain that I was hearing the same actress voice everything. Yeah. Now, James Doohan voiced a lot of the men. I don't know if you know this, but a lot of the guest male characters were James Doohan. But he can voice modulate, so you couldn't tell. Yeah. There were a lot of times I had to look it up. I'd be like, oh, that was James Doohan. Did you know, you know this, that he voiced Trelawne's father, the light in the sky. Yeah. That's James Doohan. Doesn't sound anything like him. He could voice modulate. Yeah. This is going to sound mean, but I'm going to say it anyway, because it's just how I feel about it. There was one good voice actor in this entire show, and it was James Doohan. I could say voice acting in general is the worst part of this show, because while William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley and all of these guys know how to act for real, George Takei did an okay job in this, but he got as much to say as he did in TOS. They didn't know how to voice act. Do you agree with this? Did you have the same thing I did?
I didn't notice it as much.
Boy, but... I thought it almost didn't matter that we had the original cast. I almost thought if they had found trained voice actors who were into cartoon voiceover that could sort of do those actors, it would have actually been a better show. Because they really sounded like they were phoning it in, like almost every time. Yeah. There was no energy in them. They sounded like they were
energy when it's just your voice.
You do, and I'm not saying that they didn't care. And that they didn't want to be there. I don't know. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is nobody properly directing them. We had two directors in the show, two directors only. For the first season, it was Hal Sutherland, and the second season, it was Bill Reed. And neither of these two guys knew how to direct their voice actors. They might have had a voice director. Usually there's a voice director on top of your animation director. Whoever was directing them wasn't getting enough of a performance out of them. They really sounded like they were reading. They sounded like they were sitting down. They sounded like they were talking like this. And it doesn't work. Yeah. Anyway, that's my biggest complaint. Yeah.
You know, I bet after you said that, if I were to go back and watch those episodes again, I would totally
You'd notice it.
I would notice that. Because I think it was subliminal. In there, but
William Shatner,
that's not something that I'd pick up on.
Shatner doesn't sound like he's doing Kirk the way he did Kirk in TOS. Yeah, Kirk is a different character in the show.
Yeah, that's true.
He's no fun. And that's the thing, is that like nobody's. I mean, there are some places where he's kind of fun, but not because he's doing Kirk stuff. Because he's in silly situations, and at that point, everybody is the same sort of fun. Yeah. Anyway, that's the biggest thing. We couldn't hire more female voice actors, really? Like, I get that maybe you didn't have any kind of a budget for this show, but, like, I just have a really tough time buying that you couldn't have gotten, like, a couple of other women to come in off the street. And, I mean, like, again, this sounds awful, but, like, people that have never done voice acting work before would fit fine in the show. So you wouldn't have to pay him very much. Like, I would be fine with really stolid, red, clunky reading over Majel Barrett does everyone.
Yeah, I know that was driving you nuts through the entire thing.
I don't mean to overstate it. I cannot be the only person that has this issue with this show. Yeah. And it was already something I knew before we started watching it. I'd only ever seen a handful of episodes, but they all had her voice.
You know, the crazy thing is, I'd seen a few of these,
Don't tell me you didn't notice it.
I didn't notice until you brought it up, and then it bugged me the whole time, too.
Yeah, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it.
No, I wish you hadn't told me. I probably would have enjoyed the experience more.
You probably would have. Every time it happened, it took me completely out, and I could, and I already didn't feel like I was really in a fully fleshed out world or anything. You know what I mean? But once again, I don't mean to take it too seriously. And let's go ahead and talk about that now. That is the conundrum with this show, though, is that it kind of wants you to with what it's doing tonally, but then, but then the really goofy Saturday morning concepts and also somewhat of a tone is at odds with that tone. There's two things that are hitting each other real hard in this. Yeah, I can't decide a lot of the time if it wants to be a legitimate science fiction drama or if it wants to be really strange, out there, silly fun for kids. I don't know if this is for kids. I can never tell.
Yeah, I was having a hard time. We were talking about this throughout the show and trying to figure this out. And yeah, in places it's very goofy, but in other places I imagine that a kid would just get bored and walk away or change the channel or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, the premises are very often Saturday morning premises. There's a lot of things that are done kind of because you could never do it in live action at that time very, very effectively. And a lot of the time it seems on top of that to be stuff that you would never have done in a serious drama. So we have the giant clone of Spock episode, and we have the everybody gets tiny episode, and we have the everyone turns into children but only for the last 15 seconds episode. I don't understand. We have what are some other? We have the Kirk and Spock develop gills and have to be put in a fish tank.
Yeah.
Episode, stuff like that. So we have the really silly gimmicks. Now, that's not to say that Star Trek doesn't do those kinds of, like, you have the weird conceit, and then we use that to foster the drama and maybe talk about some ideas. You have stuff like TNG Rascals. Yeah. That could
where they all turn into children.
Where three of the crew members turn into children.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a silly thing. You even have stuff like a causality loops. Even that is almost this kind of gimmick.
Yeah, but it's still that kind of thing. It's
rapid aging is one of these.
Harder to do live action, just because you have to do crazy stuff with makeup, or you have to get even different actors, or
DS9 even did the turn everybody tiny thing in one little ship.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a lot easier to just draw a giant Spock rather than to try to figure out how in the world are you going to get a giant Spock on screen with normal-sized Spock.
And then, like you said, you had the ship turns into a practical joker in the episode The Practical Joker, and somehow becomes sentient. And by the way, they don't even deal with it at the end. It just remains that way, apparently. Like, the problem is not really solved, right?
No, they put him back in that cloud. They go through that cloud again.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh,
left him behind.
Okay. I have such a hard time following the plots of the show. Like, really, I'm an invalid when I'm watching this show. I get to the end and I'm like, what? Could someone please explain this to me? I don't understand.
Yeah, but they spent the entire episode explaining it to you.
That's the problem, is that I zone out.
Yeah.
And I'm just focused on the goofy stuff, and then all I want is the goofy. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So when you get those kind of things, you expect some like frantic, silly, ridiculous. Like, if this show was made now with those ideas, it probably would have a disclaimer at the beginning that said there's like crazy flashing lights and it moves around too much and like it could cause seizures. Like, the ideas of the show should be in a show that causes seizures. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And you should.
Am I making any sense?
You should have to look through a visor at something that's a tabletop thing, and it's all in red.
Yeah, so you think that this show is best watched through Virtual Boy?
No.
No.
But that's what I was saying.
So what are some so I guess we should finish that thought real quick before we move on. So yeah, I like I said, I don't know a lot of the time who the show is for. I think those things are at odds with each other. I guess that's just that's ultimately the point I was making there. Anything to add to that? What could they have done to fix it?
Well, I guess just pick an audience. If you're gonna go the full just silly crazy kid route, we don't really care what's going on, take out most of the exposition. Just let the kid watch what's on screen unfolding however crazy it is. A lot of times generally kids will follow the plot without really understanding because they're used to a lot of things being over their heads.
And then it might sink in anyway.
And then they'll sink in it anyway, or they'll fill in the gaps and use their imaginations.
Yeah.
So
that's a great point.
You could do that, or if you want to go full tilt and make it, it's animated and it's kind of for kids, Star Trek for kids, but we really want adults to watch this too. So use the bigger concepts, use the more science fiction stuff. You can leave the goofy in, I guess, but I mean, just actually have all the talking heads be talking about substance.
And in either case, give your characters fun stuff to say.
Yeah.
In fact, I think maybe it's unfair to blame lack of experience for why the voice acting sounds so muted and dull.
Yeah.
And more that they weren't given anything to say.
Yeah.
Like you know, where is McCoy's snarky dialogue back and forth to Spock? You know, where is Kirk's womanizing? I get it's a cartoon, but like every now and again there was something. And in fact, there's one episode where there's some weird Kirk sexual innuendo that goes farther than TOS ever went. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go that far. Do you know what I'm talking about? They're all on that, like, I think they blur together. I think it's like that. It's like a desert world. They're on like that floating space car thing, and there are several different species, and there's this like there's like this mercenary chick, or is she a mercenary, or is she is she a thief? I forget what she is, but she's like deadly, and she's hanging out with Kirk, and they're making passes at each other, and you don't remember this?
Was that the one where you had a group of various aliens go together to try to find this artifact?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they're all artifact-driven plots. Nearly all of them. But yes.
Okay, I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and she kept talking about, not in these terms, of course, but she kept talking about how the females of her species were like really like sexually charged and abrasive and stuff, and she wanted to jump on Kirk right there in the floating car.
Yeah.
In a cartoon!
Yeah.
And then Kirk's like, I'm sorry, we just don't have time.
Yeah, because their mission was of vital importance.
It's hilarious. Yeah. You know, and when you have a show that is this boring and they do something like that, your ears perk up. You know, you're like, yeah, that's say more strange, silly sexual innuendo, please. So yeah, that kind of stuff felt really weird in this show.
Yeah.
But I could have, in a way, I could have used more of, maybe not that, but just like more just fun character moments.
Yeah.
Every now and again, you'd get one. And then there'd be nothing else like that in the entire episode.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, totally sidetracking.
Absolutely. Please do.
Something else that I think this show could have done without. And I'm sure there are probably people who will disagree with me, but I say you're wrong. The two added aliens on the bridge.
May I disagree with you this much?
You're wrong, but you may.
No, because when I say this, you'll agree with me.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with the two aliens except for the fact that they never got any characterization whatsoever and their voices. I don't have a problem with put a cat chick on the bridge. Yeah. I don't have a problem with replace Chekhov with Eric's if for some reason you feel like you have to. By the way, I should mention this, not to sidetrack your sidetrack. I don't know exactly why Chekhov was removed from the show and replaced with this Eric's guy. I used to George Takei talked at length about the animated series in his autobiography. He's probably the only one who did. Although I haven't read all the autobiographies, but in his autobiography he talks about this, and he talks about when the Star Trek cast finally came back together and thought that they were never going to before. Apparently, at first they heard there was a cartoon coming, and they weren't invited at first. And I guess they threw a fit. And they finally got in the show. Like they almost did it the way I described earlier.
Oh wow, yeah.
And he talks about that, and I can't remember why he said that Walter Koenig wasn't brought in, but Koenig wrote an episode. And it's one of the best episodes. It probably is my favorite of them. Koenig's episode is called The Infinite Vulcan. That's the one with the giant Spock.
Yeah.
And it's involved, and the lore is fascinating, and the species makes some kind of sense.
Yeah.
And like the reason they want to make Spock into this they're trying to kind of like replace their leader god thing. It's been a little while since I've watched it now. We watched this over the course of like 3 months. But I just remember watching that one and thinking that it filled 22 minutes with story.
Yeah.
And there wasn't enough character stuff, but he gave the characters more cool dialogue. And I kept wishing that Koenig had been the showrunner. But anyway, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Koenig's not in the show, but he wrote an episode?
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I
But anyway,
I do agree with you.
about Erickson and Morass.
Morass,
yeah.
I don't have anything against adding characters, adding alien characters, or even like what they looked like.
Even what they were, yeah.
Yeah, and I would be okay with them not getting very much characterization, although it's weird to add characters and not explore them or do anything with them.
Yeah.
I thought that was weird. But their voices every time they spoke grated on me so
on me too.
hard. It was horrible. I ended up hoping they just never got anything to do because I didn't want them to talk.
There's one episode in particular where Majel Barrett voicing Morass, every like 2.5 minutes it cuts back to her and she says something, and she can't talk without purring.
I know.
And it's obnoxious.
Really?
It was cringeworthy.
Yeah. So that may be the worst thing of the show for me.
I wish I'd looked this up ahead of time.
But it didn't happen enough for me to...
I didn't think of this until just now, and because it's just been years since I thought of this. I wish I looked it up ahead of time. There is either a comic book or a novel. It might be prose that actually like went back and fleshed out Eric's. And I've heard it's fantastic.
Interesting.
Yeah. And maybe it's actually a series. I forget. I see now my memory's coming back to me. I think maybe the deal was it was like a book of adaptations to prose of the animated series, and they fleshed some stuff out within these episodes. Even I think maybe that's what it was. I need to look that up and do some research on it and figure that out. I wouldn't be surprised though if some of these characters from the show weren't added into like TOS prose novels and stuff.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised. Ought to happen.
They're kind of blank slates.
Do anything you want to with them.
The end of the series.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we've hit a lot of the points I wanted to make just in a broad sense. Like I said, maybe at some point we'll come back and do some of these episodes individually. We've just sort of barely kind of glossed over them. What are... Can you think of just a couple of episodes that at least, in comparison to the rest of the series, you thought stood out over the others? I don't know if you'll be able to remember by episode title, but just,
Let's see.
We're novices in this particular Trek department. Feel free to do that irritating the one where this happened thing.
Oh, I know the ones near the end were better.
I thought so
right
too.
At the end.
And
except for the last one. But
yeah, and interesting that they were directed by somebody else.
Yeah.
Those last 6.
Yeah. And the problem is the ones at the very beginning also stand out for me, but that's probably because I've seen them more.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the first 5 or 6 I've actually seen 2 or 3 times.
Some of those are some of the best ones, though.
Yeah.
Obviously, the one that everybody remembers and talks about is Yesteryear.
Yeah, and that one's really good.
And it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's actually legitimately pretty good. Like, it's not so silly.
Yeah.
Again, wish we'd gotten some different voice actors than some of the ones that we had.
Yeah.
They did bring back Mark Leonard.
Yeah.
We did get Mark Leonard for Sarek.
Yeah.
I was really surprised by that. The guy that played Mud, we got him.
Yeah.
For Mud, that was cool.
Yeah. Although that episode was less than stellar.
Not great.
Yeah. But, I don't know, they all blur together, and it's just I can think of snippets of things that I really like from various episodes. It's always just the crazy stuff that stands out for me. You know, like the inflatable Enterprise, the giant Spock, Spock mind melding the cloud through while standing on the bridge of the Enterprise.
Oh yeah.
Or the amoeba, I guess, amoeba space creature that was.
You exist within me.
Yeah, where he's trying to convince the amoeba not to eat the planet because there are creatures on it that live. But yeah.
Inside me? Guess who voiced that?
Well, let's see. I have a 50-50 shot.
Yeah, yes you do. I thought I thought Infinite Vulcan was probably one of, if not the best episodes. One I thought was incredibly interesting was Slaver Weapon. The Slaver Weapon was written by Larry Niven, who wrote Discworld, and I know very little about Discworld. I've still never read any of the Discworld series, but I have a couple friends, one in particular who's really big into that stuff, and I've heard people talk about it. And from what I would imagine the flavor and the tone of that to be, it was an episode of Discworld. I mean, like it didn't even feel like Star Trek. It had our characters, but it was almost as if they went to a new galaxy and it was Discworld. But the concept was cool. Mm-hmm. And it even played out interestingly. I thought it was one of the better episodes where you had this weapon, you had this hand weapon that had different settings, and every time you turn it turned into a different weapon. Mm-hmm. And it did something else entirely, and it had a certain number of settings. And I think one of the things I liked about that one is that the rules were clear and I knew what they were.
Yeah.
And
it was an intriguing concept where the weapon itself has... didn't it have some sort of sentience, or it was like a computer that
yes
kind of could process information?
It was an artificial intelligence, yeah. And it was really so it could interpret who it thought should be able to use it.
Yeah,
and that was really interesting.
Really interesting.
And I thought that the writing was really heightened in that. But I mean, Larry Niven's a big name. He's apparently a really good writer, and it kind of showed there. It's still some goofy dialogue and stuff, but it was that show, you know.
Yeah.
So, let me think for a second. What else? That was those two were the big ones I really liked. Another one that I thought was almost intolerable was and we should do, real quick before we close, we should talk about sequels to TOS episodes, because there were a few, and the one I thought was the hardest to deal with was the sequel to Shore Leave.
Oh yeah.
It was pointless.
It was horrible.
And I didn't...
That was kind of the beginning of the bad episodes. Like, we were actually
there was a stretch of rough.
You know, we were into it, we were watching it, we were saying, yeah, it's goofy, it's weird, it's kind of boring in places, but yeah, we're pumped up, we're going to get through this. And then all of a sudden we got to that Shore Leave episode, and all of a sudden we weren't sure if we could go on.
Well, it didn't make any sense on a concept level.
Yeah.
Like, there was never any danger at all, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the problem?
People died in Shore Leave, and they were just fine because they showed up below the surface or wherever they showed up when they died.
And I mean, like, I guess eventually you found out that there was a little bit of potential danger. Again, I'm having a hard time remembering exactly what happened in it. What I didn't understand was why they landed on the planet and were immediately worried about things.
Yeah.
Because they know where they are. In fact, they went there for the Shore Leave experience. Like, they went there for more Shore Leave.
But the problem is that in the sequel thing, the robot decided it didn't want to be the guy just fulfilling people's imaginations anymore, and so he was giving them stuff that would kill them.
Yeah, and I guess part of the problem too. Yeah, but again, how would they know that?
Yeah.
Wouldn't they just stand there and let themselves get killed?
I would think so.
They didn't go there and check with anyone first. All they needed, the episode wouldn't have been that much better, but all they needed was to go to the planet, talk to somebody, and... Because, I mean, like, I think it would make sense to, before you get yourself into what would usually be deadly circumstances, you go down and you check first. We just want to make sure everything's working properly on your amusement park planet.
Yeah.
You know, there should be like a check-in desk. You know, you go to the amusement park planet, check it. I guess part of the problem is Shore Leave never made any sense to me.
Yeah.
I enjoy that episode.
Fun.
It's fun, but the problem is you get to the end and you're like, if the whole point was to create amusement, why was it a secret?
Yeah.
You know, that never made any sense to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like with this thing, you just go have a help desk or something. But anyway, yeah. So that was rough. The mud one didn't really work.
Yeah.
More Tribbles was better.
That was funny.
It's funny, and the idea of the glommer is cool.
Yeah, and a giant Tribble in Kirk's chair is always funny, no matter how many times you see that episode.
And allegedly, I've heard this from a lot of different places. I've not corroborated this, but I've heard this a lot. Apparently, the Tribbles are all pink because the colorist, the animator, the lead animator was colorblind. And apparently, according to our good friend Josh, really likes the show and knows it really well. We should have had him here for this, honestly. Maybe eventually we'll do. Maybe he can come on at some point and defend the show.
Yeah.
Because maybe he's got some good points as to why it's a little bit better than we're trouncing it up to be.
Yeah.
He's always told me that there are a lot of Filmation shows that he oversaw that have the same problem.
Yeah. Well, Tribbles are not supposed to be pink, but they are here.
They are there, yeah. And the whole gimmick of they get bigger instead of multiplying, that was cool.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I thought that was fun.
Well, Sarah, anything else you want to mention about this before we get going? Final thoughts, overview?
Covered it.
Yeah.
As far as overview goes, I mean, I definitely think it would be a good idea to get into some more specifics later on individual episodes.
We can do that.
But, yeah.
I think this would be a fun show to do a couple of commentaries on. I think that could happen. That might be funny.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe more MSDK 3000.
So that was redundant? But yes. MST3K.
Yes.
1000.
Yes.
Anyway, so... that's kind of our final thoughts. To sum up my whole opinion of the show, I feel like watching Star Trek the Animated Series is kind of like death metal. I can take it in small doses, you know. Like I enjoy it to a degree. It's not really my thing. I'm not gonna wear it on. No, I would wear this on a T-shirt. I totally would wear this on a T-shirt. Death metal, not so much necessarily. But anyway, but I also liken it to something that was made around the same time, and that is Yellow Submarine. It sometimes feels that crazy and drug-induced, and has about the same amount of voice actors some of the time. I don't know if you know that about Yellow Submarine. Yellow Submarine, all 4 of the Beatles were voiced by exactly the same guy.
Really?
And you can never tell them apart except for knowing what they look like. But anyway, I've sat through that movie a couple of times, and it's really hard to sit through. So like there are places where for a few minutes I'm really enjoying myself, and then I just start to get nauseated a little bit in small doses.
Yes.
I probably have to break that show up into the length of animated series episodes. Yeah. To watch it again.
Then watch one a month or something.
Yes. And that's how I felt about animes. Honestly, that's a lot of why it took us this long to finally break down and make this show, because I couldn't binge this.
Yeah. It was kind of hard because, well, imagine if we had, they would run together even more than they did.
Yeah, that's a lot of why we spaced it.
Yeah.
Space it out, not forgot to do it. Yes. But anyway, so next time on the show, we're going to be we're a little bit late on this, but we're going to be reviewing the latest episode of the fan series Star Trek Continues. And it's really unusual for us to not only do fan film stuff, but do an ongoing series every time it comes out. But we were so impressed with the first episode with what Vic Mignogna is doing with that show. If you didn't see our first review of that, there's only 2 episodes out so far. And Vic Mignogna, who is a major voice actor, done a lot of work, really well known, mostly anime stuff, has spearheaded this whole TOS revival project where they have built every set of the original series, and it's to scale, and it's with the original blueprints, and they all look exactly right. And they're shooting original series episodes in the original 4x3 format, and they've of course recast everybody, but it looks really good. The acting is actually decent, and it's for all intents and purposes a professional project made as fan episodes, and the writing is pretty solid. Yeah. And this latest one, I don't want to review it right now, but we were pretty impressed with it, and felt like we better continue reviewing the show.
Yeah.
So, not that we won't have our issues, and we'll talk about them, but
Sure.
but man, am I impressed with what they're doing over there.
Yeah.
So that's the next thing we're gonna do. The show is called, the episode is called Lolani. It's about an Iran slave girl, and we're gonna be reviewing that for you in 2 weeks, and we're gonna do our level best to bring the show every 2 weeks, like as we used to, and we have a couple of really cool ideas that we're kicking around down the road. Not to mention, we do want to finally come back to the commentaries, and we will probably post those in lieu of episodes of this show. So they'll be Trekspert commentaries. And we'll start bringing that pretty soon to you. The next thing we have to do a commentary on is Search for Spock, which I'm looking forward to because it's been years since I've seen that. But anyway, Sarah, thanks for doing it.
Absolutely.
And we will be back again with you in 2 weeks. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
Thanks for watching.
The best is yet to come.